Launch one with Mason Springer. We are live. I am Mason Springer, and today we're doing a buck breakdown. Buck breakdown, right? I just shot a buck. If you have not seen, head over to my Instagram, Facebook. You can see some good pictures. I'll be posting more here soon. It is a non-typical buck, right? This thing is really wacky, but I will say he was the dominant buck in the area. He was the most mature, big-bodied, huge body on this deer. We got plenty of meat off of him. Obviously, shot him with compound bow, fixed blade broadheads. We'll run through the setup here in a minute. FAQs, we'll start with that. So he didn't go 20 yards. I mean, he toppled quick. It was a perfect shot. We've had some pretty good history with this buck. I had him on camera for a couple years now, and it's been kind of a long-awaited. Let's start with the history, right? So the neighbors actually have been sharing some trail camera pictures with us for a while now of this deer. He had a very similar rack last season, right? So he's pretty much maxed out on antler potential. So you can look at where the antlers are now, and I've got some pictures from the last year. So I knew it was time to harvest this year. And obviously, big buck. We've seen him around. He's been dominant. So anytime there's other deer around him, I mean, they were all skittish and they left. So he was scaring out any other mature bucks out of the area. He was like the king here. So obviously, we got really great neighbors. They were sharing us plenty of pictures and stuff, and that was really cool. And like I said, he went 20 yards, fell over. It was probably the easiest drag out we've ever had on this property. Most of the time, they'll go over the hill or, I mean, just hard places to get to in the brush. But yeah, so it was really cool, really a picturesque hunt, I'd say. If you haven't been listening, I've been talking about my goal of shooting a deer on the opener for the last several episodes, I'd say at least. My plan was to pattern these deer, catch them on that bedding feeding pattern, and then hopefully get it done early season, which is what I ended up doing. That way I've got more time to focus more on competition archery here during the fall. Not that I'm done hunting, though. Obviously, I still like to practice some good doe management and stuff like that. But my really serious, hard, buck hunting is pretty much over for the year, at least in Ohio. So, yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. So we'll start out with patterning and setup. I'd say, I had several encounters with this buck. I started hunting opening day. I hunted that evening, and I do remember I counted it up, and I sat in the tree stand 6 sets, and out of those 6, I saw him 3 times, and I actually smelled him once, believe it or not. I'm not sure if you've ever smelled a big buck or been in an area where a big buck is, but you can definitely smell them. They have a very, very unique scent, I'll say. So I remember one time I did smell him. Another time I saw him. He was probably 300 yards away down in a creek bottom, and obviously not within range. He was kind of splashing around in the creek with another little buck, and that was just kind of cool to watch from a distance. He never ended up coming in, but that's kind of where I was at. Set up in a hang-on stand. I was over a food source, right, hunting that bedding feeding pattern. I had been watching this deer on camera for a couple months. We've got pictures of him from velvet all the way up to now. We actually got some pictures of him shedding velvet, which is really cool. Actually, he still has some velvet on the antlers too, if you look closely. But yes, that's really cool. So that's kind of the setup. Actually, it was in a stand that I haven't hunted in the last couple years, but it was the stand that I started out in. It's actually a double ladder stand, and then from above the double ladder stand is actually a hang-on, maybe 8 feet above the double ladder. Years ago, me and my sister would sit down on the double ladder stand, and then Dad would go up to the hang-on and sit, and all 3 of us would be in one tree hunting. So that's pretty cool. But anyhow, so yeah, he had been coming past the stand during daylight or during shooting light for several weeks. Like I said, he'd been coming through, and I was getting pretty excited about what was going on there. And it was, let's see, I was patterning this buck. He was coming in during daylight. He felt comfortable in the area, and then my camera actually broke or something happened. I don't know what it was the day before season. So from the opener, which was a Saturday, through I think it was Wednesday when I fixed the camera, it was actually broke. So I did not know really what was going on. I was kind of hunting blind, but I knew that I just needed to put in the time and get in the stand. So I went in the stand and 6 sets total. First one was the encounter down on the bottom, and then we move into the second encounter. So the second encounter was really close, and this is a really good one to learn a lesson from if you're a hunter. I would say that the second encounter was really, really good. I had a lot of self-control there. So he came in and was basically in front of my stand 20 yards for several minutes. It was getting to be dusk. And he was perfect broadside. He was milling around, had his head down, and I drew the bow back, got to full draw, looked through the peep, and ran through my yes or no method, basically. So my yes or no method, I came up with this a year or two ago in the stand, and I decided when I'm at full draw, I need to be able to make the decision, am I going to shoot this deer or am I not going to shoot this deer? It has to be a black or white decision, no gray area. Either, this deer is going to be shot and it's going to be a, clean shot, perfect shot, or I'm just going to not shoot and hope for the next time. And I drew back and looked through the peep, and I could kind of make out the body line. Like I said, it was kind of a dark woods where I was hunting, and the lighting wasn't quite right, and I could make out the body line of them, but I really wasn't confident in that shot. I was afraid that something bad could have happened. I don't know what, but I ended up refraining from that shot. I used my yes or no method, which is basically get to full draw, look at that deer, and I count down from 3, 3, 2, 1, and then at the end of that, I have to say yes or no in my head. There is no delay. There is no second guessing. And I remember drawing back, looking, saying 3, 2, 1, no, and that was it. So I let down. And I will say, when I let down after I made that decision to not shoot, I started shaking like crazy. The buck fever kicked in after that, and I'm so glad it didn't kick in before I let down or before the shot. And buck fever kicked in. It was unlike anything. It did not compare to, even shooting in Vegas on a stage in front of 5,000 people. Buck fever, totally, totally different. Super unique experience. But that was really cool. I ended up passing him up that evening. It was him, and it was tough, but I knew that I would be devastated if I had not made a good shot. And so I let it down and was hoping that he would come back again later. I did not end up spooking him. I don't think that he knew I was there. He didn't hear me draw or anything like that. But that was really cool. So then the kill hunt. So I came in my stand. It was an evening hunt, and I had actually not been there for a couple days, I believe. I had stuff. I was filming podcasts and stuff, and I wasn't able to get out after school. And this day I was. This was Friday, and I went to the stand. Got on the stand, everything was cool. My camera setup is actually a gimbal, and I just mount my iPhone on it, and I'll kind of stick that down in my backpack and set it to where the camera's pointing at me. And then to turn on the camera, I have to actually reach up, hit the button, it's about eye level, and start recording. So that's kind of my camera setup. Obviously not ideal, but it's a lot better than nothing. Climb up into the stand. I remember I did a time-lapse video of the shadows in the woods moving. That was kind of cool. I posted that the other day. And about the same time, there's a group of does and, like 4-point bucks, just some, run-of-the-mill stuff that would come by the stand. And sure enough, right on time, they came in, and they ended up hanging around from about 6:30, so a little more than before shooting light ends, and then they hung around for the entire time. They were there for a while, and so I had actually, after those 4 points had came in, right, little 4-point buck, he's standing there milling around, whatever he's doing, and I look down one of my shooting lanes, and I see this little tiny twig, and I don't know, out of all the hours that I had already set in that stand, I don't know how I did not notice that twig before, but it was like right in the middle of the shooting lane, and that was not good. Like, it was blocking a much anticipated, shot. So I ended up having to get around those twigs and stuff. I ended up having to sit down in my hang on and shoot, under those branches if there was going to be a shot in that lane. So I kind of planned that out, and I ended up sitting down on my stand when that 4-point came in, because I knew that, if there's deer that came in that I wanted to shoot and it was in that lane, I was going to have to try to shoot under those branches. So sure enough, that's what I did. Later on, some more does came in. There was probably 6 of them, 6 or 7 deer that came by the stand at one time. They were all kind of in the area. They We're just milling around, and then it was probably just after sunset that one buck came in. Now, there's 2 bucks that I've been getting on camera that look really similar. It must be bad genetics from the area, but they both have a very similar rack, similar to the one that I shot. I don't know if they're brothers or twins or what, but I know the other one is a little bit younger, and he might have some better potential for next year. Still a wacky rack, though. And so when it's low light, it was easy to confuse the two. And when he first came in, I wasn't sure if it was the buck I was going after, the older one, or if it was the younger one. And so I'm right there, and I got my bow ready, and I'm looking, and his head was behind a tree through some leaves, and I couldn't quite tell. So I pull up the binocs, I look through, and I see that it is not the buck I'm looking for. I'm like, oh man, it was a bummer. And then, stuff started moving around. Some of the 2 little bucks started sparring right there. And then all of a sudden, from the other direction came, actually through some brush, he just kind of popped out right there, was the buck I was looking for. And I could tell it was him. I'm like, ooh, that's him. He's right there. And he was kind of walking through, and there's a couple different shooting lanes. He walked through the shooting lane that had the twigs in it. He was actually behind the twigs, even though I was sitting down. He was still behind the twigs, and I just couldn't take a shot like that and chance it. So I let him walk, and then there's another gap in the leaves. And by then, he had walked behind a tree. I drew the bow back. I probably held the bow over 30 seconds before I ended up shooting. Like I said, my camera setup was here at eye level when I'm standing up. So when I sat down to avoid those twigs, I couldn't reach the button to hit record. So that was kind of a bummer. I couldn't record that shot, but I did get some recording directly afterward. Anyhow, back to where he was. He came into the shooting lane, or not necessarily a shooting range, just kind of a hole in the leaves. And he stood there. I was at full draw. 3, 2, 1, yes. And I put the pin on. He was about 25 yards. I mean, my pin gap was so tight with this setup that I just put 3 pins on him and let her rip. And that's when the nerves kicked in. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to shoot so much competitive stuff and in pressure situations that I'm really used to the pressure. So I was able to keep it under control, keep my heart rate down until after the shot. But I remember when I let that arrow rip, I always, reach in the quiver, grab out that second arrow, get ready for a follow-up shot in case he comes back by. I'll take a follow-up shot just about any situation if I get the chance to. So I knocked another arrow, and I saw that he had ran away from me, so I wasn't going to have the opportunity for a follow-up shot. So that's when I'm like, oh crap, I need to record. So I reached up, hit the button, and started recording, and it was actually a really cool video. I was sitting there like, breathing really hard and shaking, and I was just listening, though. I was listening for what was going on because he had ran behind some limbs and behind a tree, and I couldn't see where he went after that. And then, 10, 15 seconds after the shot, I heard a crash. It was probably 50 yards away from me, the stand, and I wasn't, but obviously, worst case scenario starts playing through your head. So I'm like, well, I heard him crash. He must have fallen over. Did he get back up? Was it a good shot? Was it not a good shot? I really didn't see where the arrow went. I heard the arrow hit something. It almost sounded like it just hit dirt, just the sound of the impact of the arrow. And so I was pretty nervous. So, I text Dad, I just shot one. And I remember my fingers were shaking so much that I couldn't even text. I actually had to use the voice to text button. I'd talk into my phone, hey, I just shot one. Come over here. We're going to have to, track him and stuff. And I basically gave him the scenario. Obviously it felt like a great shot. I will say, everything was perfect. I squeezed it off perfect. Pin was in the right place. And, 25 yards, not a super long shot. He was broadside, ever so slightly quartered away. It was really ideal. I do remember right before the shot, he was kind of watching the 2 little bucks in front of him spar. And then he turned his head in my direction. He wasn't alerted to me, but I saw him turn his head and ears my way, and as soon as he did that, I'm like, well, it's time to put you under arrest, and cardiac arrest is what I mean by that. So whenever a deer is alerted or, ears are pointing at me, whatever it is, with a bow and arrow, I always aim lower. I'm always anticipating that, jump the string reaction of a deer, so you always aim low when you're expecting a deer to jump the string. So that's exactly what I did. Ripped off a shot. Obviously, he did not jump the string. It ended up being a perfect heart shot. We've got some good videos of that. But yeah, so that was really cool. So perfect heart shot. We came in, found the arrow, tracked him 20 yards. He had crashed and was laying right there. Beautiful shot. We were able to take him home, get some great pictures. My grandpa was actually able to come over, and we got some great pictures of him, me, and Dad, all behind that buck, 3 generations. So that was really cool. I think that the biggest lesson to take away from this is if you don't have a perfect shot, don't take it. I'm so glad I didn't take that shot. The first encounter I had with him at 20 yards, I'm very glad that I did not do that. It wasn't ideal situations. And then sure enough, the next night he came in, conditions were perfect, and I was able to harvest him right then and there. So yeah, this deer's a big body deer. We got some great pictures. Then we took him, and of course in this temperature, this weather, you have to butcher very quickly. So we stayed up until probably 2:30 cutting this deer, and of course we all butcher ourselves, and we love wild game meat. We'll take all the meat we can off of them, and we got so much meat off of this deer. He had such a huge body. Dad said that he had never had a harder time trying to drag a deer through the woods than that. Between me and him, we could barely move this deer. But anyhow, so that was super awesome. We got tons of meat in the freezer. That's great. I eat a lot of wild game. And like I said, I think the biggest lesson to take away from this is if you do not have a perfect shot, don't take it. I mean, he's going to be back one time or another. And for me, it happened to be 2 days later. And, it's super awesome, super fortunate. I've got a really cool picture of the hole in his heart where, the broadhead went in. Setup, I will say, my setup, I was shooting an old Matthews Monster. Dad and I both shoot the same bow. I don't think that there's not very many other bows, even brand new bows, that I would shoot over this R7. It's got some insane speed on it, even though it's got a 7-inch brace height. I really love the bow. Arrow setup, I'm shooting Easton 5.0s, lighter weight arrow. I really love that arrow. It tunes super well for me. Had some bigger fletchings on it. Broadhead, I'm shooting the Interlock Falcons. That is a fixed blade head. 85 grains, actually. I only had a total of I had a 85 grain head plus a 16 grain hit insert. So pretty light setup. I was sitting somewhere around 350 grains, and I was shooting 305 feet per second. So pretty good for me. I don't have a super long draw length, so I was happy with the speed I was able to get out of that bow. I had a leaf arrow in my quiver. It's kind of an old thing, camouflage basically. Dad used it years ago. Super cool though. So I was able to use that. Carter release. I always use an index trigger. ABB strings, all that stuff. I mean, it was really a good setup. I was happy with my setup. Yeah, I'd say with that, lessons. I mean, shooting them on the opener, it's all about patterning. Trail cameras obviously help a lot with that. You just gotta be mindful of, weather, wind direction, stuff like that, which moves me into this week, moving forward. So you guys are still hunting. A lot of you guys are. I would say that this week is going to be a great week for hunting, specifically like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday here in Central Ohio. We're going to have a great cold front coming in. Make sure that you guys are hunting that. Make sure you guys are paying attention to the weather, wind direction as well. Make sure it doesn't shift or anything on you. But yeah, keep that in mind for this week. We're going to have a great hunting week. I think there's going to be plenty of mature deer put down. So yeah, that's pretty much the buck breakdown. It was an awesome hunt. My biggest buck scoring was really a pain trying to score this deer. Obviously, there's some unique decisions that had to be made. I had to look through the rule books and stuff from Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, and find out some of the nuances of scoring a non-typical like this. But I got it done. He ended up scoring 160 and 7/8. Which is a lot more than I actually predicted. And actually, if both sides were the same, so his left side, which was the more typical side, if his right side had looked like his left side, he would have been somewhere around 176 inches. So obviously a great buck, big mature buck, super happy with him. Glad to get those bad genes out of the herd. I think I'm going to get a Euro mount. I think Euro mounts are a little bit more timeless. They're also smaller, so I can fit more on my wall. Maybe I'll end up hanging them back here or something. I'm not sure quite sure yet. But yeah, I appreciate you guys listening to this. If you got any questions, leave a comment, send me a message, whatever it is, and I'd be happy to answer them. Buck season for me is over. I've never had a season that has been this short. I'm glad that it was this short, though. I'll be able to dedicate my time more to competitive archery, but I still like talking whitetail. So we'll have plenty more podcasts coming to you about the whitetail space, hunting, maybe some more buck breakdowns from some guests. Hope you guys like this episode, and leave a comment, send me a message if you'd like to see more of these and any tweaks or improvements I can make. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one.